SLT Fibre and experience the power of fibre technology. Sri Lanka's only super fast internet connection. SLT Fibre. Call 1212.
Tonight, farewell to a legend. Renowned physician and academic Professor Carlo Fonseca passes away, remains handed to Calenium Medical Faculty honouring his will. No to the old system. Supreme Court response to President, says Provincial Council elections cannot be held according to the previous electoral system. Seeking extradition. Attorney General tenders extradition request for former Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahendran. A boost to the economy. Tourism Promotion Bureau optimistic that Bora Convention will act as an impetus to economic revival, gathering to attract over $50 million to Sri Lanka. All these stories and much more coming up on First at 9 this Monday, the 2nd of September 2019.
Nama Lifebuoy Cool Fresh සහ Lemon Fresh Menthol සහ Lemon සාරයෙන් 10 කඳ ඇති කරන සංගුණ විස බීජ වලින් ආරක්ෂා කර ඔබව fresh කරයි. විස බීජ off, fresh එක on.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening to you and welcome to First at 9 on AdaDerana 24, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. On your top story tonight, the Supreme Court has informed that the provincial council elections cannot be held under the previous electoral system or the Provincial Council Amendment Act. Issuing a special statement, Secretary to the President Udaya Seneviratne said that a 5-member bench of the Supreme Court had deliberated that the President does not have the power for delimitation. The 5-member judge bench comprising of Chief Justice Jayanta Jayasuriya and Justices Bhuvanekalu Vihare, Sisira Diabru, Prasanna Jayawardena and Vijit Malagoda made the deliberation after President Maithripala Sirisena submitted a reference application seeking the opinion of the Supreme Court on holding the Provincial Council election without the report on delimitation of electorates.
Winning your trust above all. We are HNB Assurance.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe commenced an official visit to the Maldives today upon the invitation of Maldivian President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih. Delivering a joint address, the two leaders highlighted the need to redouble efforts to protect citizens from the threat of terrorism. Meanwhile, 3 memoranda of understanding to facilitate practical engagement between the two governments in various spheres, including social protection, visa facilitation, education and youth development, were signed today. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe is currently engaging in a 3-day official visit to the Maldives on an invitation extended by the Maldivian President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih. Upon his arrival to the island nation this morning, he was greeted by a delegation led by the country's Minister of Foreign Affairs Abdullah Shahid. Later, the Prime Minister was received by Maldivian President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih at the Republic Square, where he was accorded a ceremonial guard of honour, including a gun salute. He was then taken to the President's house, where the two leaders held bilateral discussions. During the discussion, 3 MOUs were signed by the two governments on facilitation of visa arrangements, which would supersede the previous agreement of 2008. The renewed agreement continues to grant free 90-day on-arrival visas for visitors from Maldives and Sri Lanka. Furthermore, an MOU on cooperation in the area of social protection between the two countries, higher education, vocational training and youth development were signed in the presence of the two leaders. Meanwhile, delivering a joint statement today, both countries agreed to redouble the efforts to protect people from the threat of terrorism and reiterated that climate change is an urgent threat that needs immediate attention in both mitigation and adaptation, and agreed on the need to work with all countries to combat terrorism and counter violent extremism within the region and beyond. Both leaders also expressed their readiness to progress on constructive engagement in all spheres. President Maithripala Sirisena emphasized the importance of the role teachers play in understanding and shaping today's modern child at a ceremony to award teaching posts to 578 graduates today. He also expressed concerns over the lack of women's representation in the political sphere and the reluctance of state sector workers to accept positions outside of their local regions. A ceremony awarding 587 teaching positions to graduates who successfully sat a competitive exam in June this year was held today at Sri Lanka Foundation Institute with the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena. The event was also witnessed by Western Province Chief Minister Isuru Devapriya and Western Province Governor AJM Muzambil.
ජනගහනය 52ක් කාන්තාවක් වුවත් රාජ්‍ය සේවයේ සහ අනිකුත් වෘත්තීන් ගත් විට 70%කට ආසන්න පිරිසක් නියෝජනය වෙන්නේ කාන්තාවන්. කාන්තා නියෝජනයක් ඉතාම අඩු එකම ශේෂ්ත්‍රයේ දේශපාලන ශේෂ්ත්‍රය. ඡන්ද ඉල්ලන්න ආපුවම කාන්තාවම ඒගොල්ලන්ට ඡන්ද දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ගුරු වෘත්තිය. දැන් අද සිට ඔබ විවාහක වුණත් අවිවාහක වුණත් ඔබ හැම කෙනෙක්ම දරුවන් ඉන්න අම්මලා තාත්තලා. දැන් අද ගුරු වෘත්තියේ නෙවෙයි රාජ්‍ය සේවයේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් පත්වීමක් දුන්නාම ඒ ගෙදර ඉඳලා යන්න නැත්නම් සමාජලාට පත්වීම බාරගන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ඒක හදා ගන්නට ඕනේ. දැන් අද ඔබ දකින්නේ සංස්කෘතික දරුවෙක් නෙවෙයි තාක්ෂණික දරුවෙක් ඔබ දකින්නේ. 3G 4G 5G ඔය ඔක්කොම අවුරුදු 10 ළමයි දැන් දන්නවා. එතකොට ඔබට අභියෝගයක් ඒ දරුවා. අපි තේරුම් අරගෙන වැඩ කරන්න ඕනේ. මේ පින්වන්ත දරුවන් ඔබ රැක ගන්න ඔබ බලා ගන්න ඔබට මුළු මහත් රටේ දරුවන් සහ රටයි බාර වෙන්නේ.
Attorney General Dappala De Oliveira tendered the extradition request for former Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahindran to the Ministries of Defence as well as Foreign Affairs for necessary authentication and transmission to the Government of Singapore. Coordinating officer to the Attorney General's State Counsel Nishara Jayaratna told AdaDerana that legal documents consisting of 21,000 pages are expected to be sent to Singapore based on indictments filed against the former Central Bank Governor in the High Court by the Attorney General on the 28th of June this year. Jayaratna states that for the extradition of an individual from another country accused of committing an offence while in Sri Lanka, he or she should be indicted or charged by the prosecution or convicted by a court of law. Mahindran, who is a Singaporean citizen of Sri Lankan origin, is wanted in connection with investigations into the central bank treasury bond scam and is believed to be in Singapore. Singapore can extradite fugitives to declared Commonwealth countries, including Sri Lanka, if a proper request is made. On other news, a non-cabinet minister Ravindra Samaraweera says that a letter of request with a number of signatures from UMP members will be handed over to party leader Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, requesting Deputy Leader Minister Sajith Premadasa be named as the presidential candidate of the party. The non-cabinet minister expressed these views to media following an event held in Colombo today. 55 members of the UMP handed over a proposal to party leader Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe on the 19th of August, requesting that an immediate decision be made regarding the presidential candidate after holding talks between the UMP Working Committee and its parliamentary group. However, in a backdrop where these requests had not been addressed so far, non-cabinet minister Ravindra Samaraweera says that majority of the members are hoping to hand over another letter to the Prime Minister requesting that Deputy Leader of the party, Minister Sajith Premadasa, be named as the presidential candidate.
මේ වර්තමාන තත්ත්වයට එක්ක සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මහත්මයා තමයි සුදුසුම අපේක්ෂකයා. පහුගිය කාලේ අපි മന്ത്രിවරු 55ක් 60කට කිට්ටු වෙන්න සංඛ්‍යාවක් ඉල්ලීමක් කරා අත්සන් කරලා අපිට පාර්ලිමේන්තු කණ්ඩායම සහ කෘත්‍යාධිකාරී මණ්ඩලය එකට කැඳවලා මේ අපේක්ෂකයා තෝරගන්න කියලා. ඉතින් ඒක තාම කෙරුණෙත් නැහැ. දැන් අපි හෙට හෝ අනිද්දා බාර දෙනවා ඒ වගේම අත්සන් සංඛ්‍යාවක් හෝ ඊට වැඩි කට්ටියගේ අත්සනින් එතුමාව අපේක්ෂකයා කරන්න කියලා.
දැන්ට අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ 6 වෙනිදා ගරු අග්‍රාමාත්‍යතුමත් එක්ක නැවත සාකච්ඡාවක් කරනවා. එතනදී බොහෝ දුරට අග්‍රාමාත්‍යතුමත් ඒ ගැන තොරතුරු සොයා බලලා සමීක්ෂණ ආදි වශයෙන් තොරතුරු සොයාගෙන ඒ වැඩිම ඉල්ලුම තියෙන අපේක්ෂකයා නම් කරන්නට සාකච්ඡා කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Meanwhile, SLPP's presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa says that claims made that he will bring about safety and security through a military government are false and mere rumours. He expressed these views at a forum in Colombo yesterday.
The private bus service professionals national convention attached to the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was organised in Colombo last evening. The event was held under the auspices of the leader of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa, and SLPP presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
වැඩබිමක් වෙලා තිබිච්ච මේ අපේ මාතෘ භූමිය නැවත වාතක් දැවැන්ත සංවර්ධන යුගයකට ගෙනයා හැකි දක්ෂ පළපුරුදු විනයගරුක නායකයෙකු දැන් තෝරාගෙන තියෙනවායි කියන එකත් මම තමුන්නාන්සේලාට මතක් කරනවා. වැඩකාරයෙක් උතෝරාගත්තේ මම නෙවෙයි. මේ ඔබ ඇතුළු මුළු රටේ මුළු ජනතාව. කියන දේ කරන දේ කියන පුද්ගලයෙකු අද ඔබට අපි දීලා තියෙනවා.
මම මේ රටේ ආරක්ෂිත විනයගරුක සමාජයක් හදනවා කිව්වම සමහර වෙලාවට පතුරවනවා මේ පොලිස් රටක් ඇති කරන්න හමුදාමය මිලිටරි ආණ්ඩුවක් ගෙන්න යනවා කියලා. නමුත් කල්පනා කරලා බලන්න ඔබගේ පවුල ගැන හැඟීමක් තිබෙනවා. ඔවුන්ගේ ආරක්ෂාව ගැන ඔබ සැලකිලිමත් වෙනවා. ඔබේ පාසල් යන දරුවෙක් ඉන්නවනම් ඒ දරුවන්ට අර කුඩු විකුණන පුද්ගලයන්ගේ බලපෑමෙන් නැතුව බය නැතුව පාසල් යන්නට හැකිය වාතාවරණයක් තියෙන ඔබ සැලකිලිමත් වෙනවා. මම කතා කරන්නේ මෙන්න මේ සුරක්ෂිත රටක් බිහි කරන්නයි. මම කොළඹ නගරය ආසියාවේ වැඩියෙන්ම දියුණු වෙන රට බවට පත් කරන්නට ඉදිරිපත් වුණේ පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක් හැටියට නෙවෙයි. ඇමතිවරයෙක් හැටියට නෙවෙයි. අමාත්‍යාංශික ලේකම්වරයෙක් හැටියට. වැඩ කරන්නට ඕන නම් වැඩ කරන්නට පුළුවන් නම් ඇමතිකම් අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. ඇමතිකමේ ඉඳගෙන ජනාධිපති වෙන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. වැඩ කරන්නයි පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕන. මම වැඩ කරලා පෙන්නපු පුද්ගලයෙක්.
Meanwhile, the National Convention of SLPP's Progressive Professionals Association was held this morning where a set of proposals were passed by a unanimous vote.
වෘත්තීය සමිතියේ යෝජනාවලිය දැත් ඔසවමින් සම්මත කරගනිමු.
ඔබ අද ඉදිරිපත් කළ යෝජනා ඉතාමත්ම කාලෝචිතයි කියලා මම හිතනවා. අපි නුදුරේම ඇති කරන රජයක් තුල මේ සියලුම යෝජනා ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවායි කියන බව මම අද මේ ස්ථානයේදී සාතික වෙනවා. අපි නැවතත් සමුන්නාසලට සාතික වෙනවා. අපේ රජයක් තුල කිසිම අන්තවාදී ත්‍රස්තවාදයකට මේ රටේ ඔළුව උස්සන්නේ දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන කාරණය.
And with that, we go into a short commercial break and we will have more local news right after that, so stay tuned. Minister of Ports, Shipping and Southern Development Sagla Ratnayaka said that Sri Lanka is currently upgrading the Kankasanture harbour with the financial assistance of over $45 million by India. The minister also expressed confidence over the completion of development work of East Terminal at Colombo Port by the end of 2020. The minister made these remarks during India's 73rd Independence Day celebration organised by the Sri Lanka India Society yesterday.
Indian tourists are back in big numbers in Sri Lanka, double than any other country in the last 2 months, driving all the supply chains in Sri Lankan economy. Our companies continue to participate wholeheartedly in conferences and exhibitions in Sri Lanka. They are also making substantial investments. Our development partnership projects continue in full force, be it the development of East Container Terminal in Colombo Port or setting up an LNG terminal in Colombo. India is committed to partnering with Sri Lanka as per Sri Lanka's own priorities and requirements.
Sri Lanka is currently upgrading the KK's harbour with Indian assistance of $45.27 million through an agreement signed with the Export-Import Bank of India. India is also a partner in the Memorandum of Cooperation aimed at jointly developing the East Container Terminal at the Colombo Port. I'm confident that the project will reach completion before the end of 2020, thereby adding much needed deep draft berthing capacity to the Port of Colombo. If the two countries go on to set up the much discussed ferry services connecting Kankasanture in Jaffna with Karaikal in Pondicherry and similarly between Colombo and Tuticorin in South India, there is great scope for increased trade activity and tourism.
Renowned physician and academic Professor Carlo Fonseca breathed his last at his residence this afternoon. The former president of the Sri Lanka Medical Council was 86 years of age at the time of his passing.
Professor Carlo Fonseca, a former dean of the Faculty of Medicine at the Kelaniya University, passed away at his residence in Azulkote this afternoon. Born on 4th March 1933, Professor Fonseca was educated at both Maristella College, Negombo and St. Joseph's College, Colombo, before graduating with a first-class MBBS degree from the University of Colombo. Having started off his illustrious medical career at the General Hospital, Colombo, Professor Fonseca went on to become the president of the Sri Lanka Medical Council in 2012, serving for a period of 5 years. His stint at the president of the SLMC came at a crucial time as controversy over the educational standards of private medical colleges in Sri Lanka came to a head, featuring prominently in the public eye. Not only active in the field of medicine, Professor Fonseca was also a renowned lyricist, producing a number of music albums. Professor Fonseca was also an active member of the Sri Lanka Sama Samaja Party. According to his last will to perform his final rites within 8 hours of his death, the remains of Professor Fonseca were handed over to the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Kelaniya. Professor Fonseca had also requested that his final rites be performed in the presence of family members only, therefore no media coverage was permitted of the funeral. The void left behind by an intellectual of this caliber cannot be easily filled, and the legacy left behind by Professor Carlo Fonseca will not be forgotten.
On business news, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau Kishu Gomez is highly optimistic that the ongoing Bora Global Convention 2019, the largest international event to be held in the island after the Easter Sunday attacks, will add over $50 million to Sri Lanka's economy. Speaking to First at 9 today, Gomez also expressed his confidence that this convention will be a tremendous opportunity to make a significant contribution in uplifting Sri Lanka's tourism sector, which took a downturn following the Easter bombings.
With the commencement of the Bora Global Convention 2019 yesterday, Sri Lanka began hosting the country's largest international event following the Easter Sunday bombings on April 21st. The convention, marking Ashara Mubarakah during the first 10 days of the Muslim month of Muharram, has attracted more than 21,000 Daudi Boras, their families and even extended families from 40 countries. His Holiness Dr. Sayyidina Mufaddal Saifuddin, the 53rd Dai al-Mutlaq and head of the Daudi Bohra community, is conducting the convention hosted by Colombo at the Husseini Masjid Mosque. Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau Kishu Gomez says that all luxury hotels, apartments and other lodging facilities are currently booked across Colombo by delegations participating in the event. Gomez is optimistic that this convention could boost Sri Lanka's tourism sector, which took a hard hit owing to the Easter bombings.
It is estimated that this delegation will add about $51 million to the country. That is by way of using all the facilities in Sri Lanka. And apart from that, I'm sure some of these people will certainly extend their stay to go around the country to experience all the tourism products, and that will be added revenue for the country. The other angle to it is that when these 21,000 Boras go back to their respective countries, that they will share that positive experience with their relatives, with their friends and their countrymen and women. So through that we will be able to create a greater share of voice for the country, and with that I'm sure we will be able to make a significant contribution towards the entire rebuilding process.
The Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau says that following the convention, thousands of Boras have also planned to visit tourist destinations across various cities in the island, including Galle, Sigiriya, Badulla, Nuwara and Kandy.
Proposals are being made to revise the regulatory framework governing the initial listing of shares on the Colombo Stock Exchange. This is being carried out by the Colombo Stock Exchange in consultation with the Securities and Exchange Commission, which looks at exploring revisions on the eligibility criteria for initial listing of shares on the main board and the Dirisavi board, IPO timelines and the basis of allotting shares. Issuing a media communique today, the Colombo Stock Exchange stated that the revision of the regulatory framework governing the initial listing of shares on the CSE is aimed at broadening the CSE listing rules to complement Sri Lanka's rapidly developing commercial landscape, comprising of multiple new business models and segments, and improving the efficiency of the listing process, while offering greater flexibility to companies listing on the CSE. In terms of the main board, the proposed amendments to the initial listing rules would offer companies looking to list on the CSE an alternative to the 3 consecutive financial year net profit after tax requirement, which is currently applicable. Under the proposed amendments, an aggregate net profit after tax for 3 consecutive financial years immediately preceding the date of the initial listing application will also be acceptable, where companies would not be required to be profitable in each financial year in the 3-year period. For main board applicants that cannot meet the profit requirement, it is proposed that firms that are eligible to list on the main board should have revenues of 3 billion rupees and market capitalization of 5 billion rupees, 3 years of profit and 2 years of positive net assets. Meanwhile, amendments to the eligibility criteria of the Dirisavi board propose that if a company's market capitalization is valued at 1 billion or above at the point of listing, it must demonstrate a revenue of 350 million rupees for the financial year. With the objective of safeguarding investor interests, the proposed revisions will also require the independent auditor's report in the audited financial statements of the entity for the financial year immediately preceding the date of the initial listing application to not contain an emphasis of matter on ongoing concern. As part of the exercise, CSE is also proposing to revise the basis of allotting shares in IPOs above 3 billion rupees. In such instances, the issuer will have the flexibility to determine the basis of allotting the shares in a fair and equitable manner in consultation with the CSE.
Meanwhile, Colombo's all-share price index gained 6.16 points to 5,896.02, and the S&P 20 index of more liquid stocks was up 0.68% on 19.78 points at 2,928.22. Meanwhile, the market turnover was 143 million rupees. We now have Dimantha Matthew from First Capital Holdings with a brief report on today's market performance.
In the bond market, commencing the week, the secondary market completely dried up, while the overall market witnessed ultra-thin volumes. In the stock market, the market declined for the third consecutive session, ran down by JKH and Hatton National Bank. The SPI recorded a 2-week low, witnessing a downtrend throughout the day with sideways movement. A net foreign outflow was witnessed, though there was low foreign participation.
The latest round of tariffs between the US and China resulted in a subdued performance across global markets, forcing Argentina to reintroduce capital controls as the country faces sovereign default. The tit-for-tat tariffs targeted key consumer goods and, for the first time, US crude ahead of planned talks this month.
MSCI's All-Country World Index, which tracks shares across 47 countries, were down 0.04% on the day. Meanwhile, European shares ticked higher as surprisingly positive data helped China weather the latest round of tit-for-tat tariffs between the United States and China that came into effect over the weekend. Trade-sensitive German shares were 0.4% higher, and the Pan-European Stocks Benchmark Index Stoxx 600 was up 0.63% by midday in London, beginning September higher. It fell 1.6% in August as the trade war intensified. In currency markets, the dollar was 0.1% higher against a basket of peers. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan dropped 0.24%, led by 0.5% drop in Hong Kong's Hang Seng after another weekend of violent anti-government protests. Chinese shares rose, however, with the CSI 300 index gaining 1.1% despite the trade war escalation. Brent crude futures dropped 0.15% to $59.60 a barrel. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures were flat at $55.01.
The Sri Lankan rupee ended 0.4% weak at 179 rupees and 75.85 cents against the US dollar, compared with Friday's close of 179 rupees. Let's now take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other currencies during the day. We will join you with international news right after this commercial break, so stay tuned. Hurricane Dorian, the second strongest Atlantic storm on record, pounded the Bahamian islands of Great Abaco and Grand Bahama last night and was forecast to move dangerously close to Florida in the next 2 days. The Category 5 storm made landfall on Elbow Cay in the Abaco Islands with maximum sustained winds of 295 km per hour and gusts of 354 km per hour. There is no official word on casualties, but the Red Cross fears some 13,000 homes have been damaged or destroyed, and extensive flooding has created an urgent need for clean water as well as becoming contaminated with salt water. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp meanwhile ordered evacuations in all or parts of 6 coastal counties, also effective at noon today. Taking to Twitter, Commonwealth Secretary General Patricia Scotland said Commonwealth countries stand ready to support the Bahamas in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian. According to the British Ministry of Defence, the Royal Navy auxiliary ship RFA Mounts Bay is due to arrive in the Bahamas today. The ship carries aid supplies, building material, a helicopter, specialist transport equipment and surveying equipment, the spokesperson said. The ship will be on standby, ready to help as soon as official request is made by authorities. Meanwhile, an information campaign urging the public to get ready for Brexit has been launched by the British government. The campaign began yesterday with the launch of a website, gov.uk/Brexit. Billboards and social media adverts will appear in the coming days, and TV adverts will air later this month. Michael Gove, who is in charge of No Deal plans, said the adverts encourage shared responsibility for preparing to leave the EU on the 31st of October. It has been reported that the campaign would cost as much as £100 million as ministers seek to inform people what they might need to do, if anything, ahead of the deadline. The campaign is launched in a backdrop where British Prime Minister Boris Johnson threatened to expel rebel lawmakers from his Conservative Party if they thwart his Brexit plans by voting to prevent a no-deal exit from the European Union. Johnson's promise to leave the EU on the 31st of October with or without a divorce agreement has propelled the United Kingdom towards a constitutional crisis and a showdown with 27 other members of the bloc, with an election one of the possibilities. On to some cricket now. Sri Lanka lost their first of the 3-match T20 series against New Zealand by 5 wickets, despite putting up a competitive 174 runs for the loss of 5 wickets. Well, Sri Lankan fans wasn't left entirely disappointed and had something to celebrate as skipper Lasith Malinga achieved the landmark of being the highest wicket taker of the T20 format, surpassing previous record holder Shahid Afridi.
Electing to bat first, Sri Lanka got off to a stable start with an opening stand of 41 runs. Opener Kusal Mendis was the top scorer for the hosts, having played an explosive innings, smashing 79 in just 53 deliveries. In defending the target, Sri Lankan skipper Lasith Malinga got off to a flyer, bowling Colin Munro for a first ball duck. A quick-fire 48 from Ross Taylor and another 44 runs from Colin de Grandhomme laid the foundation for the Kiwis' victory. With the dismissal of Colin de Grandhomme, Malinga became the highest wicket taker in the T20 format with a total tally of 99 wickets. With 3 runs needed off the final over, Daryl Mitchell hit the winning runs for the visitors with 3 balls to spare.
It was just a good contest out there, hard fought game, and there was ebbs and flows throughout, and we're lucky enough to get on the right side of a tough one, but we know come 2 days' time Sri Lanka going to come back stronger, and it's going to be another good game.
Novak Djokovic's US Open title defense came unstuck yesterday when a nagging shoulder injury forced the world number 1 to retire from his 4th-round match against Stan Wawrinka, prompting a chorus of boos from the crowd at Flushing Meadows. Wawrinka was leading, but the 32-year-old seemed to have recovered by Friday, saying he was almost pain-free after winning in straight sets to reach the last 16. And with that, we conclude this edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.